Hi, guys. Well, day 3 of our book, Thanksgiving on Thursday. Remember, we're reading book number 27 in the Magic Treehouse series about Thanksgiving. And when we last left our friends Jack and Anne in chapter 4, they had been told by Priscilla that they were going to have to fish for eels and clams. And they had never done that. So they were like, what are we supposed to do? So now we're going to go into chapter 5 and find out what happens. See if they can actually get eels and clams. Okay, ready? Here we go. Chapter 5, Eels and Clams. Jack looked at Annie. We can't stay here, he said. What? She said. We can't go home now. The pilgrims need us to help them. But we don't know how to do anything, Jack said. And Squanto is going to figure out. He doesn't really know us. And don't worry so much, said Annie. We help Mom and Dad make our Thanksgiving dinner every year, don't we? We can help the pilgrims, but we better up. Clutching the big basket, she started running toward the bay. Jack sighed, then ran after her. At the rocky shore, they stopped and looked around. Little waves rolled onto the short stretch of sand. The salty air felt clean and fresh. Seagulls swooped over the water. I wonder where the eels are, said Annie. And the clams. I'll look in the book, said Jack. He pulled out their book and looked at eels in the index. He turned to the right page and read out. Squanto showed the pilgrims a way to catch eels. He showed them how to push the eels out of the way with their bare feet, then grab them with their hands. That sounds fun, said Annie. She put down the basket and pulled off her shoes and stockings. She held up her long skirt with one hand. Then she walked over to the rocks to the let me try that again. Then she walked over the rocks to the edge of the water. Jack put the research book in his bag. He pulled off his shoes and joined Annie. They dug their bare feet into the wet sand. I don't feel anything, said Jack. Let's wade into the water, said Annie. Together they stepped forward. Brr, said Annie. No kidding, Jack with a shiver. He kept squishing the muddy sand with his toes. But he felt pebbles and shells. Then he felt something soft. Hey, I think I found one, he said. Annie splashed over to him. Where? Stand back, he said. Here. Jack squished harder with his feet. The soft thing moved. Jack squished more. An eel slithered through the water. Jack grabbed it with both hands. Ah! He yelled. See, you can see him where he caught the eel. The eel was long and like a snake. It felt slimy and icky. It twisted and squirmed. Annie laughed as Jack tried to hold on to it. The eel wiggled out of Jack's hands and fell against Annie. Yikes! She yelled, jumping away and bumping into Jack. With more screams, they both tumbled into the cold water. They scrambled up and splashed back to the shore. Annie was still laughing. Poor eel, she said, trying to catch her breath. We scared him half to death. Him? Said Jack. Forget eels, said Annie, her teeth chattering. What about clams? Jack was wet and cold, but he took out the book again and looked up clams. He turned to the right page and read aloud. Squanto taught the pilgrims how to dig for quahog clams. Quahog clams are hard-shell clams. They can live for 60 years or more. The oldest have been known to live for almost 100 years. They, oh, forget it, Annie broke in. What? Said Jack. We can't catch them, she said. They live to be so old. We can't just end their lives. Jack sighed. He sat down on a rock. Annie sat next to him. Their clothes were soaking wet. Their feet were caked with muddy sand. Their basket was empty. What other things do pilgrim kids do to help? Said Annie. Jack opened the book again. He looked up Pilgrim Children. He read aloud. Pilgrim children worked very hard. They built fences and cared for animals. They planted, harvested, and ground corn. They picked pumpkins, peas, and beans. They guarded the fields, they fished and hunted, carried water, they collected nuts, they cooked and cleaned, they did everything they were. They never complained about being tired. Man, I feel tired just reading this, said Jack, closing the book. Make lousy pilgrim children. Yeah, I know, said Annie. Maybe we could do something like keep an eye on the turkey and tell them when it's ready. That's how I help Mom every year. Annie, Thanksgiving in Frog Creek is a whole different story from Thanksgiving with the Pilgrims, said Jack. Annie, Jack, a voice called. Jack quickly put away their book. Then they turned around. Priscilla was standing on a rock. She held a pumpkin and carried a basket filled with yellow squash and red corn. I was looking for you, she said. All right, now we're on chapter 6 called Good Work. Sorry, guys, I had to move my computer so it'd be a little easier. All right, chapter 6 Good Work. Good day, Priscilla, said Annie. Good day, said Priscilla. She walked to them. Did thou fill the basket with eels and clams? Not really, said Jack. The eel didn't want to get caught, said Annie, and the clams lived to be so old. We didn't think it was right to take their lives. Priscilla laughed. She had her sad eyes sparkled. What strange children, she said, but you both look wet and cold. Would you like to come to my house and warm up by the fire? Yes, said Jack and Annie. They washed off their feet and pulled on their shoes and stockings. Jack picked up his bag. Annie picked up their empty basket. Would thou like to put some of my corn and squash in thy basket? Said Priscilla. Oh, thanks, said Annie. She took some corn and squash from Priscilla's basket. And perhaps thou would like to carry the pumpkin? Priscilla said to Jack. Sure, said Jack. Sure? Said Priscilla. I mean, indeed, said Jack. He felt relieved. Now they wouldn't have to go back empty handed. Jack wrapped his arms around the heavy pumpkin. Annie carried the basket. They followed Priscilla back to the village. The pilgrims in Wampanoag were gathering in a wide dirt street. Women were baking bread in an outdoor oven. Some boys were setting wooden planks on barrels to make tables. Mary, the little girl, was carrying a bucket of water. Squanto sat smoking a pipe with Chief Massasoit, Governor Bradford, and Captain Standish. Jack hoped Mary wouldn't ask him about the clams and eels. He hoped Squanto wouldn't ask him about Captain John Smith. He hoped the governor and captain wouldn't ask him about home. Jack hid his face behind the fat pumpkin. Priscilla opened the door to a small house. Then she led Jack and Annie into a dark, smoky room. The only light came from one window and a fire. Sit by the hearth, said Priscilla, so your clothes can dry. Where's the hearth? Annie asked, looking around. Priscilla laughed again, shaking her head. There where the fire lies, she said. Jack put down the pumpkin and his bag. Annie put down her basket. The hearth was so large, Jack could have stood in it. He and Annie got as close as they could to the warm, crackling fire. Several pots hung over the fire. Near the pots, a turkey was roasting on an iron rod. The Thanksgiving turkey, Annie whispered. Cool, said Jack. The very first thing, he thought. Would you please stir the corn pudding whilst thou art drying? Asked Priscilla. She pointed to one of the pots. Indeed, said Jack. Priscilla took a wooden spoon out of a jug of water near the hearth. She gave it to Jack. He put it into the thick pudding and stirred. So here you can see what the hearth looks like where the fire is and all the pots and the turkey that are being cooked over top of the fire. I must gather nuts, said Priscilla. Whilst I'm gone, move the roots close to the ashes and stir herbs into the seafood chowder. Indeed, said Annie. After Priscilla left, Annie looked at Jack. What are roots and herbs? She asked. Look in the book, said Jack. Annie took the research book from Jack's bag, shut up roots, and read aloud. The pilgrims called certain vegetables roots. These vegetables, such as carrots and turnips, grow under the ground. Ah, said Jack. He picked up some carrots and turnips near the hearth and moved them close to the hot ashes. Next, Annie looked up herbs. She read aloud. The pilgrims called leafy vegetables that grow above the ground herbs. They made salads with herbs. They used dried herbs to flavor soups and seafood chowders. Jack saw some dried plants hanging from the rafters. Those must be the herbs, he said. Annie broke off a leaf and sniffed it. Mmm, that smells good, she said. She leaned close to one of the pots. And that must be the seafood chowder. It smells like the ocean. She crumbled the leaf into the chowder. She took another spoon from the jug of water, and she and Jack both stirred pots. Good work, Priscilla said as she stepped back into the room. Jack smiled. The fire had made him hot and sweaty. The smoke burned his eyes, but he didn't mind. Finally, he felt useful. Priscilla put some walnuts close to the fire. Squanto taught us which nuts are good to eat, she said. Squanto taught thee a lot, said Annie. He saved our lives, Priscilla said quietly. Last winter, we were cold and hungry. Half our people died. Annie gasped. How? She said. Sickness, said Priscilla. Fever took my mother and father and my brother. Her eyes were bright with tears. No one spoke. The sound of the crackling fire filled the room. When then Annie put her ugh, then Annie put her arm around Priscilla. We're so sorry, said Annie. Yes, we are, said Jack. Thank you, Priscilla said with a sad smile. 'Twas a terrible winter, but we never gave up hope. And now, God be praised, we have we have had a good harvest and we have peace with our neighbors. In the glow of the firelight, Priscilla was beautiful. Jack thought not only was she kind, but she was incredibly brave as well. Come, she said. She wiped her eyes and stood up. Something special is about to take place. Would thou like to watch? Sure, I mean, indeed, said Annie. She and Jack jumped up and followed Priscilla outside. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 6. We're going to stop here today and we will read chapters 7 and 8 tomorrow and we'll find out what this special something that's about to take place is going to be. Okay, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.